Welcome to Elle Photography Studio's Lightroom tutorials. Today we're going to look at how to take an image and use some of the effects that we have within our Lightroom basic tools. As with all our images, when we're enhancing the images, we take them into the development module. So please ensure that you have actually selected your image and you're going to put it into development. We're going to look today to create an image, take a basic image, and then add various effects to come out with an image that's looking entirely different. The first thing when you're using images I would strongly advise you to do is to create a virtual copy of that image. So if you're using a Mac, press your Control key and your left button on your mouse, which will bring you up a selection list, and we will create a virtual copy. I'm now going to work on my virtual copy, and the first thing I'm going to do is to go into my basic tools, and I'm going to enhance the exposure a little bit by moving my slider and making the image just that little bit more lighter. This will help us to tone down our effects and get a much more pleasing image after finishing with the effects side of the system. Once you have your exposure set, and again you can adjust your contrast if you believe that is required at this particular stage, then we're going to move down to the effects menu. As with all the menus, if you see this little arrow at the side, it indicates there is more to select below. So by clicking on the arrow, this will bring you through your different options. And as we're going to first look at vignetting, we can see that it's telling us about post-cropping and vignetting right at the top. We have a style, a priority, and again, with the little arrows up and down, it implies that we have different options we can use, such as colour priority, highlight priority, or paint overlay. Today we're going to look at paint overlay. We can select the amount that we want to start adding the vignetting to our image. So if we just want it round the edges, then we will just move our slider a fraction. However, if we want to exaggerate it further, we will do so using the slider and pushing it to one side. Once you're happy with the amount of vignetting around your image, we are then going to change the midpoint, which allows us to select where we want that vignetting to be and where we want our dark images, so we can see that it's rounding it more within the centre. Feathering will allow us to feather so that it's not such, as you can see here in this image, it's a more direct circle. If we use our feather button, it just merges the dark and the light together for us. We can now look at adding some grain to our image to make it a little bit gritty and maybe an older looking photograph. By selecting grain, the first slider will allow us to add the amount of grain to our image. So we can add a lot of grain, as you can see this is now quite grainy, or indeed we can reduce it and just have a little grain. For this exercise I'm going to put on the full grain. The size is the size of the grain, and again we can have just small grain, or by sliding it to the right, we are now a lot more gritty and a lot more grainer. I'm going to reduce that a little bit, just a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Our final slider is the roughness of the grain, and again we can make that grain very rough, or not so rough, we can make it a much softer grain. Once you're happy with the amount of grain and the amount of vignetting that you have around your image, the final step to make this image a little bit more pleasing is for us to look at the saturation tool. So if we go into the hue saturation, and again we have our arrow which allows us to select more, we are going to select saturation, and from here what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the reds and yellows. So now what we have is an image that is entirely different to our previous image where we started. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, then please visit our website www.ljstudio.com